good afternoon. I'm Daniel Miller, and this is the Gaming Dialogue News. A warm welcome to all of our friends, fans, community members, participants, viewers, and everyone watching us worldwide on a variety of different platforms. Thank you for joining us and thank you for being our dedicated community members. What a good day I had today. A bright sunshine from very early. Loads of admin duties today for me, but all successfully completed. And then being able to go through the news, collect everything, prepare for this bulletin, and also play a few games. And last night I had a wonderful session in which I completed Open Roads. It's quite a short game, but really wonderful. The content is so appealing and well blending with what we do here in terms of charitable fundraising and our support for mental health charities. So everyone really needs to dive in and basically play the game. It is easily available on Xbox Game Pass. If you're a subscriber, you can just play it for free, download, or indeed play it on cloud, as I did. Plays really beautifully. It's not a game that's very taxing on the graphics or bandwidth, and the content of the game is just really remarkable. I'll tell you all about this in a minute. So a very good day so far. Had a really good breakfast and exercised a bit, and did the usual sort of drill. I think people asked me a couple of questions. Well, what is your drill per day? And basically I mentioned a few times what I do is I wake up, and then first thing I do is I drink some water with lemon, and that's usually at least a pint, and then sometimes maybe 2 pints even, depending on how dry I wake up. And after that, exercise, and that's usually physiotherapy and stretches and various other exercises, included about 40 minutes. After that, there is shaving, there is toothbrushing, shower, and then it's breakfast. And breakfast is always extra healthy for me. To be honest with you, my breakfast is the most important part of every single day when I wake up. And people ask me, what do you usually eat, etc. Because, in my local area, the English breakfast is the most popular. And you can have today both meat and vegetarian, depending on your preference. It's fairly big. You get sausages and bacon and beans and toast and hash browns and bubble and squeak and all sorts if you are on the meat side. And then for the vegetarians, you will get spread that's made of different types of vegetables. That includes also vegetarian sausages, hash browns, and you get some extra potatoes, you name it. It's really pretty good. In any case, I do not eat any fried breakfast ever. I have been doing, probably since I was in my mid-teens, what I consider to be the very best, and that's providing me with minerals, vitamins, nourishment, and everything else that I need early in the day in order to feel awake, in order to be ready for various duties and activities, and to feel so healthy, fit and well, because after exercise you should feel really wide awake. But that's not always the case with me. I have a condition called post-viral ME, and that really makes me sometimes very haggard, very sort of low energy and all sorts. And in addition to that, I had sciatica of late, which was preventing me from my usual mobility. So, really lots of health issues that really sometimes impair me on waking, and therefore I've got to pay a lot of attention to make sure that I'm indeed as good as possible for everything that is there for me to do. So what do? I create myself my own healthy breakfast, and that's usually either a combination of different types of cereals. So it's muesli, different types of muesli, without any sugar, without any salt, with some dry fruit, and then at least 3 to 4 types of fruit together with it, and a bit of yogurt. So you'll have bananas, you have grapefruit, you'll have apples, sometimes tangerines, sometimes melons, pineapple, depending on what I get on the night before, and I eat all of that. So it's usually, if it's cold outside, I eat porridge, so it will be cooked first, and that also needs to have a bit of cinnamon and turmeric, like those two together. Turmeric and cinnamon are very, very well-known spices that help immune systems, and we have got to take them every single day in a moderate quantity. So I always put some of them in my porridge, and then I also drink them with a hot drink, and that's usually grapefruit juice, freshly squeezed, together with chamomile and turmeric and cinnamon. So it's a mixture, They go half of that goes into the porridge, the other will go to my tea. And that's my drink, really hot drink and hot meal. And I usually make like quite a large quantity, so it's a sizable breakfast, and I don't have to be eating anything until maybe late afternoon, early evening. Maybe sometimes a snack, 1 or 2 o'clock p.m. You know, like a quick toasted sandwich or a bit of cheese and maybe yogurt. But the actual dinner is then cooked and eaten later in the day, and sometimes quite late, in fact. But nevertheless, my breakfast is very, very sizable. Keeps me really wide awake and properly nourished for most of my daily activities. So remember, this channel is about gaming, but it's also about health. We talk here a lot about the maintenance of the health, and one of the ways to do that is, just like I said, by simply making sure that you are waking up always roughly the same time. You go to bed roughly the same time. It doesn't have to be always like 11 o'clock, you know. You can go to bed at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, but then always wake up at 8 or 9 in the morning. So you've got a cycle of sleep, which is regular, will make you feel properly refreshed and regenerated. Sleep is what regenerates the body the best and helps the mind. You will find sometimes that people who are haggard, sleeping irregular hours, not drinking enough water, will become very forgetful. You know, they can't remember things, particularly early in the day. The reason for that is lack of water in the body and dehydration that happens during the night, where you are getting that irregular sleep affecting all bodily functions. And that obviously will include your cognitive abilities, and that's memory, you know, ability to speak, your symbol formation, and all sorts. So remember, first of all, to drink a lot of water every day, 2 liters minimum. And what I do is I drink at least 1 liter already when I wake up, you know, so it's between a pint and 2 pints. That's the imperial. And if we to be considering the usual kind of metric measurements, will say that'd be half a liter, roughly half a liter, or a full liter. And you drink that bit by bit, don't drink everything in one go, but make sure you do that very early in the morning, and therefore you're properly hydrated, wide awake. Lemon and water that provide deoxidation. You know, you'll get rid of all the toxins and everything that may be generated during the 24-hour cycle, and you know, just have a really healthy breakfast. And that's lots of muesli, lots of different types of oats and dry fruit and some other fresh fruit, a bit of yogurt, a bit of milk, a bit of water. In fact, I don't drink, forgot to mention, I make it usually with water in order to prevent fat. Maybe just a drop of milk to get a bit of a creamy flavor, or a bit more taste, but otherwise it's just going to be water and yogurt. And that's it. That's the beginning of the day. And then after that, I just get on the news, you know. And the news really are from 3 major areas of my interest. One is obviously to do with video gaming, the other is film and film industries, and the third one is current affairs. So I get really state-of-the-art, tip-top news on the regular basis, and that is serving me extremely well at all times. And you know, feeling really wide awake, happy and healthy is what really makes my day. So that was the way my day started, and there was no drizzle. It was raining yesterday the whole day, and I forgot it was bank holiday Monday, so I went out and I wanted to go swimming, and my swimming pool was closed due to the fact that everybody was enjoying their time of rest. And then I went for a lengthy walk, something I missed out on in recent days, and it was raining, you know, so it was raining quite a bit. I managed to find a very good Michael Connolly's recent book in our local church-based library. We have like a book exchange library at our local church, and you can exchange as many books as you want or bring the new ones. And I believe in me had been able to collect maybe 20 boxes, banana boxes of books from there over the last couple of years, because we have very many avid readers in our local area, and it's a wealthy area. People buy brand new books, and then once they're read, you know, occupy space. I think younger generation is not keeping the books forever, and they exchange. So I was able to get very many books, basically at no price, got them for free, exchange for some of those I've read, or my doubles, and thoroughly enjoyed them. So Michael Connolly's book is right there on my desk, and perfect accompaniment to the series I watched on Amazon, which is obviously, again, Michael Connolly's Bosch. Highly recommend it to everyone. Bosch is a wonderful crime series, really comes in a category of the very best, like The Wire and Homicide: Life on the Street, if you were familiar with his titles, and highly recommend it to everyone. Both series, Bosch Legacy as well as the original, of 7 seasons is accessible free of charge on Amazon Prime. So you subscribe to Amazon Video and you will be getting it all free of charge. You can watch it at any time. Really suspenseful episodes, really gripping, absolutely terrific stuff. Really highly recommended to everyone. So that was really the beginning of my day, and that was last night. And today we'll have Eurovision Song Contest, which is what we are going to be watching tonight, clashing with the semi-final football of Champions League. And so we have PSG playing Dortmund, and really I probably will be watching 2 things at once rather than just one of those, and want to see what's going on both fronts. And very, very unfortunate that this clashed. They've not considered that when looking at the dates for either of those events, and you know, that's probably in Paris. They'll have Eurovision on the big screen at Parc des Princes together with football. I don't know, we'll have to see, but it's going to be like a busy, very interesting, very sociable, very entertaining or entertainment filled evening. But on the games front, going back to what I said earlier, I had a very successful conclusion of Open Roads yesterday. Very happy that concluded the game. Only played it for about 4 days. It's fairly short, but the story is really gripping, and I have to say I recommend it to everyone, and particularly our community members who are supporting charitable fundraising, or anyone who's experienced some sort of mental health problem, or most importantly, on the younger side, our friends who are teenagers or fairly youthful who have been experiencing difficulties with their parents, or they discovered some sort of turmoil within their own family. Well, that game tackles those issues and tackles them really successfully, and you will see how discovering family secrets towards the end is not going to be bringing any form of fracture, but rather harmony in your relationships with your mother or father or anyone else who you have near you. And that really gives you very good points and very good direction as to what you need to be doing if you want to reconciliate or find a new level of understanding or anything else. And it is all about mutuality and sharing, 2 of them have lots of difficulties. She's a single mother. The girl's father left them, and she pursued a divorce, then lived alone, lived with her own mother, who became very ill, and then sadly passed away. Sadly, lots of tensions between the younger daughter and her, in view of the mother's employment and her career, and all other sorts of things related to the marriage and the disappearance of her father. So you have a very common situation that is being viewed and seen everywhere, and you have a solution in there, what you need to be doing if you want to make sure that this doesn't bring any form of collision with your family members and within your very important relationships. And the answer, in fact, in this story and in this game was linked to the discovery. So once they discovered the real truth behind both father's disappearance and of the mother's experience, through which she believed that her own father had died of a heart attack, but actually in the game they discovered something else happened, and I'm not going to tell you what. And so that's really one of the key issues. No spoilers in here. And it was the mutual rediscovery, or I should say a mutual discovery of the real truth, that brought that degree of reconciliation, because both of them became clearer in their mind on what happened, and they were no longer as badly affected. You see, that really is a very important key factor in any form of therapy when you are dealing with conflictual issues within a family environment. If you consider how a conflict or any form of issue that is oppressive for any family member can be dealt with, I can tell you it is through a discussion, it's through a dialogue. Anything that's been oppressing you will be like a picture book, like a film in your mind, and you have all these images and pictures, and each one of the images will have a certain set of feelings. You have some emotions attached to whatever you see. What is upsetting you is not really the pictures, it's the feelings they caused, right? So it's the emotions. And you've got to be able, through talking and discussions, to divorce from that impact, meaning these emotions then at that point would not have the same effect on you, would not be as upsetting. That for many people is almost impossible. I have seen many people in clinical practice who are living with these kinds of experiences for 20, 30 or 40 years, and they never managed to grow out of it. without proper assistance. Sometimes, for some people, it is actually very difficult to divorce from those emotions. But unless you talk, unless you explore, unless you verbalize what's been on your mind, you are not going to be able to do that. And that is what causes the key difficulty. So this game gives you that direction and tells you that when they started talking, exploring the mutual backgrounds, and when they began looking into their own past and everything that's been affecting them, that was the key area. They talked, they shared, they communicated, they traveled together, they explored the past, they discovered the secrets, they faced them, and after discovering the real truth, they took, I guess, another turn. They decided to drive away in a very different direction life-wise and find a new solution to the way they lived. So that's very, very soothing. So I recommend the game to everyone. For me, it's 10 out of 10. There are some minor glitches there with maybe animation, or you could find, I guess, the difference between the dialogue cutscenes, which are like a graphic novel or picture book, and the actual areas which you're exploring that are presenting you with high quality graphics. But you know, that's for those people who are kind of technical geeks and more dependent on the tech and that side of things rather than the content. And for me, the content was really amazing. The game's been recommended by quite a few people. They talked about it on Xbox Podcast, and I've seen some very positive reviews. But on the other hand, I've come across the Wikipedia page in which they indicated that many people, well, the critics, kind of slated the game. They said it was really too short and not interesting. And honestly, I cannot understand why. Perhaps they played another game. They could have not played the game that I enjoyed and entertained now for several nights on trot. And also, it's a kind of game you can play before going to bed. You know, it doesn't have really high energy. It's not like a top level, high octane FPS. You can just watch it and listen to the characters and then easily snooze off, you know, fall asleep. And that is basically what not to say that the game's boring, on contrary, but it's got the content of a novel, as if you were reading a novel and then suddenly you got a bit tired and fell asleep. So it gives you that extra sedation, if you want it, in a very, very kind of natural format that will help you on every level, be it from your, I guess, if you apply the concept to everyday life and your relationships, you will be having that degree of remedy. And then on the other hand, if you are just considering whether you want to fall asleep and you're a bit tired and what you want to be doing in order to feel a bit tranquil, then that certainly is one of those activities which you can pursue. Anyway, great game on every level, absolutely terrific. And I also had played yesterday another game, and I want to also just draw attention to something that I've been doing of late on my Twitter, recommend that to everyone, and that is all of my gaming activity is now documented by screenshots. And these screenshots are capturing the gameplay either by myself, if I'm doing single-player games, or most importantly with our community members who are doing multiplayers and games like Destiny. So everyone should really head to my Twitter and explore some of these images and engage with comments and views, as these images are supporting Mind, the charity that's currently raising funds for, and every one of them will have tags and labels indicating that we are a charitable fundraising channel, and we are trying to both collect the revenue and get the donations, as well as raise publicity for the charity. So, you know, any form of interaction on any of the images will be very greatly appreciated. There are many in there. In fact, I was astonished. I've been posting this on a regular basis for about a week, so it's about 7 days on a trot. And today, when I had launched some of the images from my PlayStation app, linked to Destiny yesterday, Onslaught, it's like several hundred people watching them instantly, like literally within a couple of seconds. So that was really very interesting. It looks like the algorithm of Twitter's picked up on the tags and on the interest, and we are just getting many more people who are interested in our gameplay live online with our community members. So an ideal opportunity for support our Mind charity, support our charities, tags and links to be given to the world for people to recognize that and perhaps get fully involved. So I really want to urge all of my friends and community members to do exactly that, which would be simply to join forces with us and then maybe share some of the images, you know, on your Twitter, Facebook, anywhere, and or TikTok clips, We have clips of our gameplay as well, so just definitely make sure they're shared, and that you try to really draw as much attention as possible, not just to our gameplay, but also to the noble causes which this channel is supporting, as well as everything else related to charitable fundraising, to our Mind charity in Britain, and also other charities that support mental health or help people with disabilities. Just remember that, very, very important in the present day and age. Right, coming back to the games I played, a wonderful, wonderful game called Broken Age, and I played Broken Age yesterday for the first time, and really was absolutely astonished with the gameplay, the quality, the overall interactivity of the characters. Quirky little characters, very funny, very entertaining. Just bear with me, I need to get up some information about Broken Age. I had lost it, unfortunately, so I don't know what's happened and why. Right, so basically this game, Broken Age, is part of the 20 game downloads that I was telling you about in the course of the last week, and all of these games had been on my console to be played, all of them representing the independent gaming community and independent developers, and each one of the images which has been launched and posted to Twitter is indeed telling you that you need to be supporting our charities, but also the indie game developers. You will hear later from my news bulletin that we had some really sad, very devastating news about some of these guys, and you know, my heart sinks when I see that a successful independent development company is suddenly sinking because there isn't enough support coming from the big cheese. There aren't many enough investments, and that is certainly of great concern to me, that you have somebody producing very successful games and suddenly they basically fade away, or they go to oblivion because there isn't enough money, or they've not really been able to sell many enough copies, or God knows what. And so anyway, I'll reflect on this news a bit later, but I really feel that us as streamers, we do not support independent developers and publishers as sufficiently as we should, for the reason which is very, very simple. And that reason is they do not get any marketing campaigns. The title's not well known, and the only platform, in fact, I mean, maybe on Steam you get some promotion, but it's not really that much. The only platform that's giving it the major thumbs up is the Microsoft Xbox Game Pass, and they have a special section in there with these indie games, and I have to say they're coming in very large numbers. That's the best possible way through which you can get accreditation and exposure for the titles and the developers that no one's ever heard of before. And I have to assure you that every one of these titles, and I played quite a few, every one of these titles are absolutely amazing. They don't have really fantastic graphics. They do not really appeal to the guys who will be mouth-watering, images of Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Destiny 2. But the idea, the dialogue, gameplay, and also the characters are incredible, and they usually connect with some of the very important areas of human existence, everyday relationships, everyday situations, in a way that can be also entertaining, funny, ludicrous, or sometimes devastatingly horrible. And that depends obviously on what situation you are approaching and also what type of game you are likely to be choosing. But I have seen some games that actually were quite terrifying, irrespective of the graphics and everything else. It was the idea, you know, it was the overall concept that made people shiver. So coming back to Broken Age, I started with the game yesterday, played it for about an hour, and I will carry on, of course, and I'll tell you a bit about it. It's basically a point-and-click adventure video game, and when you load the game, you will get a pop-up telling you who this developer is, and that's the best pop-up I've ever seen. Honestly, it is truly incredible. When you see that pop-up, you will just say to yourself, I really want to play all the games that this developer made. And why is that? Because of the way it's designed. Go and have a look. Go to my Twitter, dig up that posting, and you'll see that Double Fine, I repeat that, Double Fine is the independent developer who created both the logo as well as this wonderful little game. And Tim Schafer has been involved with the game, and you will know that one of his biggest games, still one of the most popular in video gaming, is Grim Fandango, the game from the late 90s, which I played on my Seat, and then and a game that is incredibly entertaining, funny dialogue. It's like a reworking the concept of film noir in a modern kind of present day and age environment with very, very weird, strange characters, with lots of different activities and funny situations, which will definitely highly entertain you. So that's his first return to point and click. Since then, he's not done any games within that period, and it's been recently released. So that was, I think, in January of 2014, offered across the board on all platforms. And it's interesting how they developed the game in 2 acts. They first released on January 28, 2014, 2 weeks after they had some Kickstarter backers, and then they had a second release on the April the 28th of 2015. I apologize, I did say that it was released recently. It recently popped up on the Game Pass, but the release of the game was almost 10 years ago, and they had a retail version of the full game for Windows and for Mac, and that was published by Nordic Games in 2015, so that's already 9 years ago. And then Switch was receiving their version in 2018. That was on September the 13th. So anyway, it did begin development under the working title Double Fine Adventure, and the final title is Broken Age, of course. And this was a Kickstarter crowdfunded project, and you had Double Fine as the developer, and then 2Player Productions already in February of 2012. So it's a long time ago. That's even before Destiny 1 was released. And then the original goal was of $400,000 to cover the costs of the development and then documentary filming. It's a quite expensive game if you look at it. So Broken Age became the largest crowdfunded video game project of all time in 2012, I should say. And it raised $3.4 million more from 87,000 backers within only 1 month. So listen to this. They asked for $400,000 and they raised $3.4 million from the independent backers within 1 month. So it's 31 days. It does tell you that loads of people admire and adore those individuals from the industry who are creating amazing games, and they will provide that revenue. If you had 80,000 backers or 87,000 backers and everyone was chipping in, we made $20 or $30, $10, $5, $15, they would raise the revenue to that level. And that's amazing. And that's exactly what really is incredibly important for all of these projects. Anyway, it's a huge risk. You didn't know whether the game was going to succeed, so you invested, and it's just the way things are when you're investing. You do not have a guaranteed return. Coming back to that, you had at that time the highest backed crowdfunded project of all times, and you had basically people who were wondering whether it will be successful, and it turned out to be definitely selling in a big way. It was very popular with very many people who had invested. And also, if you have 87,000 backers and everyone bought a game, or maybe they get it for free if they invest, I'm not sure. And maybe they even buy the game just to support the effort even more. So that was just seen within the industry as a viable alternative to what is seen otherwise as a traditional venture capital and publisher funding for certain niche video game titles. And then you also had a documentary made, which was produced by 2Player Productions. I pretty will dig it up. I've maybe put it on the blog or so. I've not been following this at the time, but I do remember some interviews with Tim, and this was in relation to a couple of other games of late, and the games that came out on Xbox Game Pass as well. So definitely very much of interest, and I'll recommend. Well, first of all, I watched the documentary, then I'm recommending the game to everyone already. But I think it will be giving us a very good overview on what was going on as they were making the game. And most importantly, it will be literally giving a very clear picture of what it's like to be doing the crowdfunding and raising the revenue for such a project. And that's really remarkable and incredible and noble and impressive. And we want to support any of that at any time. Well, I certainly do, and I hope that members of my community will do exactly the same. Just have a look. I think that I've got some problems here with the information there that's gone on. Let me see. Yeah, that's right. I apologize for that. I just need to change. Be back in literally a split second. We have suddenly, for some reason, a wrong title emerging. So I need to adapt this. That is... I don't know why that's happening, you know, really weird. It's just giving me the... It's a glitch also on PlayStation. Sometimes it's loading the title of the previous stream, and it's usually relevant. I mean, if you're doing exactly the same thing every day, then obviously it's not a big deal. But for me, this is a serious issue. So suddenly it was telling everyone it's Destiny Academy. It's actually Gaming News. And that is not really a very good idea. So where is it? Also needs to go to a different game. Right. Don't know what's going on. Nah, it should be fine. Yeah. So that should be okay. Yeah, coming back to Tim Schafer, his team, and everything related to Broken Age. So what do you do in Broken Age? Well, if you went to Twitter and if you had a look at my lovely little screenshots, you would have seen that there are so many different things that you can do there. It's a game opening up the whole idea of what it's like to be living within a family. But the characters are so funny, so lovable, and they represent the usual stereotypes you will get in certain families. And you have one character, and she is like your protagonist. She's controlled by you, and you can direct her by clicking across, like across different parts of the screen. She got all directions, which is interesting. Usually that's not the case with some of these games. And she can also talk to NPCs as non-playable characters, and you will be learning all about the game, well done, the tasks from them. And it's interesting, I've seen at the beginning of two different characters, male and female, and I started out on the female characters. I'm not sure what will happen later with the man. And it says that you can be switching from one character to the other through the interface, but I don't really think I want to do that. You know, it's no point. I'd rather do one character back to back and then resort to the change, and that's the idea. And then it says that it also does have context-sensitive actions instead of using verb lists, as early adventure games would use. So Schafer stated there really was always one verb, which was interact with, and he opted for the more modern approach. So lots of different bits of dialogue, and you can choose for yourself whatever you feel is most applicable. And they will have separate inventories, and they collect objects and do lots of different things. So how many acts are there? It says plot has got several acts. Act 1, Act 2, it's 2 acts. Okay. And won't go through the story, but there are lots of different activities, and they sort of find certain items which will break the tradition of their everyday lives, and they'll be finding out some adventures, you know. So you really do not want to know what the adventures are. And let me see, there's a lot of discussion there on the development. They had it under the codename Reds, after Red's Place, following a Double Fine tradition of basing codenames on local Chinatown bars. And Schafer had not written anything by the time they started with the development, and they were just building a game engine first, then art style, technical questions. Then they used open source Moai game platform. So that was the engine, that was the basis. And he really is always experimenting, you know. He is really kind of a leader of that experimental type of works in industry, and he's a wonderful guy. So if you have a chance, just go to YouTube, put down Tim Schafer, you get all the interviews and everything he said about various games they made, and also about the industry. He's obviously very knowledgeable, and he's in the know about everything that's going on. And so they have a reevaluation in 2013, and then they were considering what to do to make the game more interesting. The first playable version of the game was released on Steam's early access platform. That was January 2014, and then they could get some revenue from the sales, and they could fund the rest of the game and some additional testing. And so now it was like a step-by-step approach, which was giving see very, very good results. And then they produced the game. There was a retail version having both acts. That was for Windows and PCs mainly, and that was released through the partnership with Nordic Games, and they helped bring retail releases of Double Fine's earlier games in 2014. And then later, this was 3-4 years later, they also released the game on PlayStation, and he engaged with actors who were participating in his previous games, and these were notably Jennifer Hale, Richard Horvitz, Nick Jameson, Nicky Rapp, and Jack Black. So Elijah Wood, Pendleton Wood, Will Wheaton, Masasa Moyo, Alex Rigopoulos. You will recognize obviously some of the bigger names, and that was certainly going to be raising the bar for the title and for everything that he was going to accomplish with his experiment. And then also they were going to be releasing the game, and they said that I think during the Electronic Entertainment Convention 2018, that Broken Age will be available on the Switch alongside the remastered version of Grim Fandango. So Switch was having the remastered version of Grim Fandango first, but we've seen the same copy, the same new edition also on PlayStation and Xbox. And if you've not played Grim Fandango, I'm absolutely urging you to do so. It's a wonderful, wonderful game. So the documentary I told you about is presenting it with the process of game making, recorded by Two Player Productions, also part of that Kickstarter. They really want to, to expose the focus on what it's like to be creating a game from scratch, which is given to you on Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a very, very difficult venture. I don't know whether you ever have been involved with any of these, but, first of all, in order to get funds to come your way, you've got to raise publicity. You've got to become known to a degree. And that indeed is sometimes very difficult for the developers and game makers who have not received any form of public exposure. So once you build your community, once you have your community, once it's large, once it has many participants, then that is giving you certainly more muscle for which you can raise funds. For Tim, it wasn't too difficult considering he is a legendary figure in the industry, and when he declared that he was doing this all by himself, then indeed he received, as you've seen, 87,000 donors or contributors or whatever investors who made it possible. Instead of $500,000 or $400,000, they managed to raise 3.4, and it definitely greatly helped. So they had a suggestion initially that the whole process should be documented, and that was coming from Two Player Productions, and then they were just charting the development from the beginning to end, and they did set some money aside for the project, and then it was at the beginning designed just for the backers. People who pay the money, they would be able to see what they were actually doing, which is, I think, a really good idea. You've heard of investors giving the revenue to certain companies and then being kept in suspense, particularly if the games were delayed, not knowing what was actually going on. When you're documenting the works, when you've got the audio-visual images and experience of how the game is made and what is being currently done and completed, then it's a lot easier for the investors to sort of sit there in suspense to see what results they'll be getting once the title comes out. And that is very, very important. So that really succeeded. And as I said, initially not accessible to the public, but then they were giving separate episodes from, I think it was March of 2015, to everyone free of charge on YouTube, on their channel. And it really did get a lot of praise for being a straightforward, honest approach to video game making, and also presenting the world and the backers with assets and liabilities. You can see how, for instance, sometimes things go really well, and then at other times you feel like you've been hitting like the rock bottom. Things are just literally going south every single day, and there could be all sorts of reasons for that. So really, I highly recommend it to everyone. Have a look and enjoy, and then ping me a message and tell me whether you liked it and what you thought of Tim, of his company, as well as everything else that is game related. Very well received as expected. The vast majority of hubs were giving it like 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And like PC World has given it, PC Game has given it 76 out of 100. You had for PCs 82 out of 100 for Act 1. And then you had PS4 81 out of 100, Vita even 90. It's a game really easily played on Switch and Vita. You sort of point and click, you just point with your finger. It's really enjoyable, and you get this flavor of kind of Switch in particular when you are doing it on your Xbox or PlayStation. Really beautiful graphics, stunning animations, and it's like walking into a very big animated feature and then becoming one of the participants and exploring that world and characters, and a really good story, a lot of dialogue, everything very funny and colorful, wonderful costumes, wonderful design, and extremely appealing. Again, in addition to all the games I told you about, like a short track, open world, chicory, there we have it. We have yet another Celeste, I forgot to mention. There we have it with a wonderful older title, Broken Age. Most highly recommended to everyone. So that was really my gaming yesterday. And in addition to that, as you know, we were having a lengthy session of Destiny 2 Onslaught. Onslaught is an activity fully part of Into the Light event, lasting until 4th of June. It will be pulled or vaulted, as to say, or sunsetted, whatever the term is, on the day where we'll get the final shape coming from Bungie. So we better really hammer it and have as much as possible of it and get all the platinum loot and everything that is acquirable from the activity. I still have not been able to do Pantheon, and I'm a bit disappointed because I have very large community of Destiny veterans, and because I've not streamed of late, not many of them have been in a regular day-to-day contact, and those people who are very dedicated members of this channel had not played Pantheon throughout the last week for the same reason. They said it was very difficult to find a team of 6 or 5 in addition to them to try it, and they didn't want to do it just in a pedestrian way, having a look and being killed straight away. They wanted to do it properly. So that turns out to be a serious difficulty for very many people, and I'm still waiting for a crew, to join me, at least extra 4 people for us to go and have a look at the bosses. I'm hoping that any one of our dedicated Destiny veterans and regulars on the channel will come back to me within the next couple of days and say, we've got this crew and we are going to be able to do it, and it's all good, and let's just crack on. And then hopefully we are also going to be able to put it on my channel, stream it live, and get as many interested souls as possible to watch and to contribute and to donate, obviously to donate, to support our charity that we are presently fundraising for. And so yesterday, myself and Sandpage and another community member, we had been hammering Onslaught. We had, let me think, it was 1 round, 2 rounds, I think it was 3 rounds of Onslaught. And in 1 round we went up and we came to the level 25, but unfortunately one of our teammates crashed, and as he crashed he couldn't get back in, and therefore we basically were terminated by the bosses. Just to put in perspective, this is an activity similar to endgame stuff, and you have in the proper Onslaught 50 rounds of activities. It's 50 waves of enemies, and every 10th activity will end with a major boss, and you got to eliminate everything. You must not die. I should say one of the team members will have to survive if you are to carry on. So at no stage should it be all 3 dead, because there's no revival then. And then you also have a generator that needs to be maintained. So it's a bit like, doing the control points in Crucible. You got to make sure that the generator will be surviving after all these massive onslaughts. And you get really waves of enemies similar to what you had in Escalation Protocol. So the same quantity, more or less. And you got to defend the generator and eliminate the enemy. So that's the task. And as I said, 50 waves is fairly lengthy. Generally, with our community members, we were completing it within an hour. So it's a 60 minutes to about 70 minutes activity if all goes well. And then we had 3 rounds of Onslaught yesterday. The first one ended at the stage of 25th round, and as I said, one of the members crashed, therefore we lost. And then the second time around, we've gone down to the end. So it was 50 rounds, 50 waves completed. We managed to get some really good loot. And then for the last Onslaught that we played yesterday, we went to the level 46 or 48, I think it was. And then for whatever reason, all 3 of us died at once within the same split second at 3 different locations in the arena, and therefore we were again disqualified. The whole thing fell. We got it, 48th wave, and then not being able to go ahead and complete and collect the platinum loot was really, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, you name it. And I think our friend Sandpeach was concerned that we sort of failed at the very, very last hurdle in there. But it's a game, it happens, and sometimes could be also some glitches, and we were doing really well. We were doing it from separate positions, and we covered each other, revived many times. Everything was as it should be, and we're using different weapons. So I was using my heavy all the time and getting 12 rockets at all times in order to hit the enemy, and it worked well. It really is useful with the rocket launcher you get in that platinum loot. I forget actually what it's called now. It does have 12 rounds magazine or loadings, and you can then be eliminating as many as possible, literally spamming the bosses and enemies with those rockets. The same thing applies to your platinum grenade launcher. So they're very, very useful. For me, they worked much better than some of the other exotic weapons that I had from early in the game. And you sort of coordinate your effort accordingly. And you also have 2 separate levels. You have the one that is like normal, and then the other is the harder or the hardest difficulty level. So you can obviously play on the normal level for a while, and then once you feel that you mastered it, you get in on the harder difficulty level. The only difference there is for your hard difficulty level, you will need to be having your full squad on board, because there's no matchmaking, which means if you come in as a 2-piece, you will not be able to finish it. It's just a non-starter. You need to have that 3rd person in there in order to help. It's just the activity created for a 3-piece, and they design it for that reason. And as I said, there's no matchmaking on the hard difficulty level in the same way as you'd have it with Strikes or with Nightfall. It's exactly the same. And so get your friends together, make sure your mates are awake, alert, and ready to join, and then crack on. And then send us some clips, bring some messages, tell us what your experience was. Ours was really, really good. We had a lot of fun, and I had plenty of very funny encounters. I usually die quite a lot, and I tend to be getting into very risky situations where I guess some of my friends have been a bit more reserved. They were sort of trying to find good positions in cover, and they were doing it in many very conservative fashions, hitting the enemy from distance, etc. Anyway, very enjoyable, and you can try out any strategy. You can do it in any way imaginable, and just keep up with good spirit, with positivity, chin up, and do not get disappointed if you're being killed right at the end. Do it again, and do it with your friends, and have fun. Share your views, talk, communicate, bring in newbies and rookies and teach them how to use certain weapons and how to acquire abilities in order to use the supers, and to perhaps mod weapons to increase your mobility, resilience, discipline, all of that. A lot to learn in Destiny. And I think what's really fundamental is that our community of gamers attached to this channel, I'd say down to the last one, are people who are always prepared to help and very friendly and very attentive. I've not had one person who was just dismissive or competitive who actually is a member of our community. We've had other people popping in from time to time, but they just had a look and didn't like it and more interested in charities, and they went to the channels that are doing speedruns and chasing various other scores, etc. So yeah, so that was our Destiny stream yesterday. 5 hours of Onslaught, very enjoyable. And I have to say, although I had a lot of water together with me, I did get a bit dizzy on the second wave, on the second lot of waves. It was a second Onslaught, and it's all the flashing lights, the colors, the activities, and I drew attention to one of my podcast from a couple of years ago in which I was discussing video gaming and epilepsy. And you will know that flashing lights and photosensitivity can be causing certain types of epileptic seizures. And there is a wonderful, dedicated gamer and writer on gaming in the US, and she's a former servicewoman. She was in the US Navy. She was with Special Forces, and unfortunately sustained a serious injury that gave her epilepsy. So it was obviously an injury with severe fracture of skull, or I don't read the details, but something that did affect the nervous system very seriously, and she developed grand mal attacks and seizures. So she had written several articles indicating as to why she loves Destiny, despite the fact that Destiny is the game which can be triggering off epileptic seizures, grand mal seizures, due to the concentration of flashing lights and like quick exchanges, and I guess frame rate and various other factors. So it's a very, very interesting podcast in which I'm explaining to people what actually the illness is and how it manifests itself, as to why it's important to be adhering to a very healthy lifestyle if you have it, and you can still be doing video gaming. And on top of that, there were some tips on what one needs to do in order to minimize the risk for anyone who has photosensitivity. It doesn't have to be really fully blown epilepsy, but it can be affecting your neurological abilities. You can be a bit hazy, a bit, like a clouded consciousness, or you can be a bit unstable on your feet and that sort of thing. And her articles and her videos are very, very remarkable. So I recommend them to everyone, and also just resorts to those podcasts when I talked about her and her works and her engagement with the industry, which I think should be very, very, very much of interest to anyone who's interested in video gaming and health. Right, so that is all about my gaming activities from yesterday. So we just progress now to what is coming from the industry on the wire to us. And I have to say, I have been absolutely gutted to learn today, and this was just before I was about to be broadcasting, so it was literally around 4 o'clock. I had some news coming from Bloomberg, and Bloomberg is the hub that deals with investments and financial industry, and they had this news indicating that Xbox and Microsoft were closing down 4 studios that are attached to Bethesda. And these studios had produced some absolutely phenomenal games during the last 10 years. One of them had backfired recently, and you'll see very shortly which one that is. But the other ones had some of the best-selling, the most greatly enjoyable games of those genres that they produced. And really gutted, really shocked, and really dismayed to see that the whole trend of closures and dismissals is continuing within that industry that in fact had flourished during the last 10 years, 6 years, last 6 to 8 years in particular, with so many titles, with so many games, with so much interest on the global level for both the games and the developers, as well as participants and other streamers and everyone really, that I really can't understand it. I don't understand what the real reason for such trend, which is like an avalanche and that's spread out everywhere, really is. And if you are a member of that community, if you're somebody who is working with the industry, with the gaming industry, and you experience some of these things, well, please enlighten me and please tell me what the real reasons are, because I'm reading these articles and I get information from various hubs, but I'm not 100% sure that the real issues are being openly shared and discussed with everyone. So I don't know what they are, but if you are one of those members, you can communicate with me in private, or you can forward me messages. I'm really, really interested. I can't believe for the life of me, when I heard, for instance, that the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush is closing, I couldn't understand why. I mean, what's the reason? Obviously, there may be some hidden reasons that I'm not fully aware of, like, for instance, a huge success with one game and serious problems with other games that make a huge deficit, or inappropriately spent marketing budgets. I don't know. It seems to be it needs to be looked at. But I'll give you now a rundown on what's happened. And first of all, we are going to be considering or looking at the article that's come from IGN, and they were the first ones, in addition to Bloomberg, to break the news. So basically, the first studio that is now being shut down, that is not surprising to me, I've got to say, is the Redfall developer, that's Arkane Austin. and you will know that they made some really great games in the past, Batman games in particular, and they also created Deathloop that was very successful. But Redfall to me was like a Deathloop ripoff, just placed in a vampire-based environment. In addition to that, with lots of technical errors, glitches, and problems, where the game really didn't perform as it should on release. And also, it was shocking to see that there was this absence of interactivity with NPCs. So many NPCs, and the only thing they could say to you is, hi, boo. That's just absolute nonsense. And I tried like 50 characters there in various environments, and they were just saying, aha. And you can see it's an NPC. It's got a pop-up in there asking you to talk to him. So it really didn't gel with me. I played it initially on release for maybe 10, 15, 20 hours or so. Very disappointing. And also the gameplay didn't really work for me on incursions and battles. So the whole area of how you are going to be able to eliminate these vampires was very similar to Ghostwire, a very popular PC game, but actually didn't materialize when you played Redfall. You know, it didn't seem to allow you to be pulling out the soul or doing the things as expected, and that was disappointing. So that was the first studio they announced will be closing. Then you have Tango Gameworks, and they produced one of the most popular games on Game Pass, and that's Hi-Fi Rush. A fantastic game. It's very unusual with graphics. You battle with guitars and you play music and you do funny things. And it's a combination of all sorts of genres, really. When you look at it, it reminds you of the games like Overwatch or, you know, Battle Royale, deathmatch style games, but not incorporated within that framework. And funny dialogue, highly entertaining. Everyone enjoyed the game. I remember watching Xbox podcast a little while back, and Jeff and Larry, they just loved it, and they discussed it so many times. One of the most highly recommended games of the last 2 years. So I want to find out what happened to Tango Gameworks that indeed would have caused the demise. And there are more devastating cuts at Bethesda. You know, Bethesda is now part of Microsoft Xbox Gaming Studios, and you know, it's just really surprising. The Evil Within is another game that Tango produced, and I'm really surprised to see that and The Evil Within had 2 parts as well. I played both of those, and I mean, the game that's a bit overly excessively violent for my taste, but a really good storytelling, and in some ways maybe similar to Resident Evil, you know, with survival stroke horror environment, and very difficult as well. If you're playing for the first time, it'll take a little while to master some of the techniques in order to get ahead. So let's see what our friend Wesley Yin-Poole from IGN is telling us. Just have to reposition myself so we can talk normally. It's really difficult. I got this chair, which is very comfortable, and then the mic is on an arm. It's called what's it called? The boom something. An arm boom. That's right. That's the way they call it. The jargon is an arm boom for your mic, and it's static. But I did listen to myself, and it appeared that the mic was not picking up my voice as good as it should if I was moving away from it somewhat. So I need to pay attention to this. It's been very close to me, and all is good. The only thing is, when I talk like this, I get like some pain in my neck or upper back. It's probably to do with my position in my chest. I'm really kind of static, you know, really absolutely zoomed in on the mic, and that is not really ideal. I should be able to, as I talk, you know, animate myself somewhat and be a bit in motion. So let's see what they say. Wesley Yin-Poole tells us on IGN about the closure of these studios, right? Microsoft closed a number of Bethesda studios, and that first of all includes Redfall maker Arcane Austin, then there's Hi-Fi Rush and The Evil Within, developer Tango Gameworks, and more in devastating cuts at Bethesda, IGN can confirm. So Alpha Dog Games, and they made a mobile game called Mighty Doom, are closing. And then Ragnar Studios will be absorbed by Elder Scrolls developer ZeniMax Online Studios, and currently valued at over 3 trillion. That is obviously Microsoft. Did not say to anyone whether any or how many of the staff members will actually lose their jobs. But significant layoffs will be inevitable. So IGN had asked Bethesda for comment, and they really said this is just a brand new kind of disclosure, and therefore they cannot comment on anything. On Redfall, the disastrous vampire co-op game, will now not receive promised updates. So I was really caught by surprise, because for a moment when I was reading, I thought it said the game will receive the promised DLC. How is that going to be happening if the game studios are being closed down, and the developers, the workers, they're being laid off? And I read that wrongly. So, as expected, and actually to my great distaste, my great displeasure, I discover from the posting in here that if you paid for the premium edition from the Ultimate Edition, whatever it's called, which was marketed heavily for Xbox, now you're not going to be getting any DLCs. Guess why? Because they've not been produced and you paid for them. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It is really like a daylight robbery. It is not acceptable in any shape or form. They need to refund, or they need to provide something else which will give those contributors and people who bought the game, are investors in the game, in the studio. It's ridiculous. So I said there'll be no promised updates, and that includes an offline mode and new character DLC, as Microsoft ended all development on the game. So they talked about, well, to be honest with you, I remember when Phil went live a couple of weeks after the game was released and a disastrous launch, he didn't say anything about things being patched up or anything being considered in terms of further development of the game. What he did say was that he was personally responsible for not supervising the project well enough to make sure that this would never ever happen. And he said, we just left the studio too much to their own devices. We were not monitoring the work. So I don't know if this is true, but or maybe it was a mismatch. They were monitoring, but what they received was not really matching the real state of thing. And that's what he said. So the fact they're closing the studio down, and that there's going to be no more DLCs, any works done on the game, in that respect is not surprising. And Microsoft said that Redfall will be available online through Game Pass, and obviously for people who purchase the game, and it'll be playable at any time. And they will be providing a make good offer for everyone who had been buying that Hero DLC. Right? So let's see what Arkane Studios said. Right? So they have a posting on Twitter, and it's identical to, well, very similar to what you've seen on the website of the developer. It's Neon Games, isn't it? What was it called? Tango, I beg your pardon. I just suddenly lost track. Tango Games is the developer of Hi-Fi Rush, and they had a similar sort of announcement on Twitter. Twitter is the main hub for business announcements, make no mistake. And they said, well, Arkane Studio said today that it was announced that Arkane Studio Austin will close and development will not continue on Redfall. To everyone that has supported the work from our Austin studio over the years, thank you. Thank you for spending time in our words and making them your own. Arkane Lyon will continue their focus on immersive experiences where they are hard at work on the upcoming project. And Redfall players who purchase the Hero Pass as part of the Premium Buyback Edition or the Premium Buyback Upgrade will be eligible to receive the value of the upgrade. While there will be no further updates, Redfall servers will remain online for players to enjoy. Well, that's really dreadful news. I mean, let's face the facts. It's just ridiculous. And they said that the other studio, which is working on Marvel's Blade, will be surviving this purge, as does Bethesda Game Studios with Fallout, Elder Scrolls and Starfield, and Machine Games, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Yeah, that's the, again, part of Bethesda, and Doom developer ID Software is also unaffected. So, let me see. In an email to staff, and that's been sent by Matt Booty. He is the big boss, the big head of Xbox Game Studios. Microsoft blamed the cuts on a reprioritization of titles and resources. So like some titles have got no place in the sun anymore because other titles are being prioritized. The question is, what titles are being prioritized? And also prioritizing resources, right? Which means how many people work on a game. You've seen that, for instance, Bungie, an independent company, had reallocated groups of people who work for the company and work on Destiny to Marathon, the new project. And, it is just possible within that company to be doing that sort of thing. But if you're looking at the wider scheme of things, Microsoft, for instance, they have different investments and different priorities, and they will be doing it in a very, very different fashion. So Mr. Booty, the big boss of Xbox Game Studios, the head of Xbox, I mean, the big boss is Phil Spencer, but he's the head, is sharing news, and he says, "Today I'm sharing changes we're making to our Bethesda and ZeniMax teams. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles, and they are further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which you have nurtured over very many decades. To double down on these franchises and invest to build new ones requires us to look across the business to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for future success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others and that some of our colleagues will be leaving us." Well, that's mildly put. Some of our colleagues will be leaving us. No, they will be laid off. It's a very big difference between you deciding to leave because you got another job and the other, when you're being told, well, on Friday, clear your desk. I mean, honestly, it's just, what can I say? Better if I say nothing, right? Here are the changes going into effect. Arkane Austin. The studio will close with immediate effect, I guess. He didn't put that there. He just said this studio will close, with some members of the team joining other studios to work on projects across Bethesda. Arkane Austin has a history of making impactful and innovative games, and it is a pedigree that everyone should be very proud of. Redfall's previous update will be its last, as we end all development on the game. The game and its service will remain online for players to enjoy and will provide make good offers to any player who purchased the Hero DLC. My question is, for how long? Maybe just that they'll, turn off the service in a couple of months. Alpha Dog Studios. This studio will also close. We appreciate the team's creativity in bringing Doom to new players. Mighty Doom will be sunset on August 7th, and we will be turning off the ability for players to make any purchases in the game. So Mighty Doom is going to be deleted. There'll be no more Mighty Doom. Alpha Dog Studios are closing with immediate effect, I guess. Tango Gameworks will also close. We are thankful for their contributions to Bethesda and players around the world. Hi-Fi Rush will continue to be available to players on the platforms as it is today. Well, I mean, it's ridiculous, eh? I mean, Hi-Fi Rush, one of the most popular games on Xbox for quite some time, and didn't seem to be particularly relevant, I think, what he wrote about this studio and the game. What would be the idea? One of the most popular games suddenly disappearing? You can't play it anymore. It's ridiculous. Roundhouse Games, the team at Roundhouse Games will be joining ZeniMax Online Studios, which is ZOS in short. Roundhouse has played a key role in many of our recent game launches, and bringing them into ZOS to work on the Elder Scrolls Online, which completely changed direction, will mean we can do even more to grow the world that millions of players can call home. Well, to be honest with you, it just seems to me that they're really diverting resources to AAA blockbusters. Probably in view of the Fallout franchise and the recent series, they realize, we need many more people to work on this in the future. We want to produce maybe now Fallout 5, maybe we want to this and the other, and that will be certainly then overshadowing smaller, independent-minded projects or the games that are unlikely to be acquiring that degree of interest. But I said that many times and in recent podcasts. With these sort of approaches to which trading companies keep buying everyone, we lose on the competitive elements in the industry. We lose on the creativity because, you'll have actually hardly any competition eventually, and you'll be all guided by the bosses of the trading companies that own you, and that doesn't seem to be right. You had the same problem in the film industry of the 1930s towards the end, and they all had to be then separating the distribution from exhibitors and from the production. Up to that point, for a good 15 years, actually more than that, I think even during the silent era, some of the studios owned certain picture palaces, and it's just the fact that they were all monopolizing the market, and therefore creativity was stifled and wasn't very good for the business. So I think that is the danger, and that may well be happening to the video game industry, whether they like it or not, sooner or later, if it carries on like this. That's my opinion, that's my take, and eventually these approaches will leave many people very angry, begrudged and unhappy, and this is not something that you want to see. So it says, with this consolidation of our Bethesda studio teams, we can invest more deeply in our portfolio of games, the IP. A small number of roles across select Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated. Right? A small number of roles across select Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated. I mean, some of the executives also getting the P45, as we call it in Britain. Those will also be impacted. Those whose roles are going to be impacted will be notified today. So they'll actually get the notices today. And we ask that you please treat your departing colleagues with great respect and compassion. We will provide our full support to those who are impacted in today's notifications and through their transitions, and that includes severance benefits informed by local laws. But this will have a nuclear effect on the community. You know, these are the studios that joined Microsoft umbrella of game studios in order to have greater sense of security and more exposure, and now they're experiencing what indeed is frequently happening in other corporate companies and in other areas of industry, and it's shocking. I've got to say, I'm horrified. I'm a great supporter of Xbox and game studios and everything I've seen, certainly during the last 14 years, but what I've heard today had really made me rethink some of my ideas and perspectives on the corporation. I need to know the reasons. You know, they need to be more transparent about the reasons for this, because the transparency is critical when it comes to as to why certain decisions are taken. And he's very cagey in providing us with any clues. We just hear that some people will be laid off and other people will be ring-fenced, as we call it in Britain. So, I don't know. We need to see. So he says, Matt Booty, in his statement, these changes are not a reflection of the creativity and skill of the talented individuals at his team or the risks they took to try brand new things. I acknowledge that these changes are also disruptive to the various support teams across ZeniMax and Bethesda that bring our games to the market. We are making these tough decisions to create capacity to increase investment in other parts of our portfolio and focus on our priority games. Just like I told you, the titles that are likely to be getting the greatest revenue will have extra resources attached to their production. And the titles which they consider to be perhaps not profitable or with less interest, and they are monitoring this every single day, they'll be just shelved. You see, if you listen to the earlier part of this podcast, I kept telling you all the time, support those indie developers. Make sure they receive likes, follows, downloads. This is critical. I mean, these companies were no longer independent once they joined Microsoft Game Studios, but they still retain the aura of independence in the way they made the games. If you don't support them, if you do not download these games, you're not playing them on cloud, you're not giving them any likes, follows, or you don't leave any comments, the studio executives will say, you have no interest to anyone. And that's the bottom line. And I have seen so many musicians in London, so many creative artists in Britain, and so many different creative people worldwide fail in being able to get that degree of exposure which was necessary, and therefore depart from what they were born to do. And for that reason, my heart just sinks. I could tell you stories about, countless acts, musicians, singers, bands, groups, you name it, performers, who were fantastic. They were incredible. They were really geared for worldwide fame. And they all departed from those creative industries because they couldn't get exposure. It's a bit like being let off in there. You know, you hope you play at a good venue with lots of people coming to see you. Nobody's coming to see you because you have no marketing budget. Nobody promoted you. Yet the big cheese has promotion everywhere, from double-decker buses to railway stations, the underground places, the internet, everywhere. Where we look, the adverts are there for these musicians. And the other guys, and that is 95% or even 99%, are getting no exposure. So, there is some thinking behind it, and therefore I feel it's so important to offer that degree of support. People do not create the art for the money. Same way as the doctors do not work for the money, I mean, as a clinician, as a practitioner, as a senior clinical psychotherapist, I have never been thinking about the revenue. I always thought about how I'm going to be able to save somebody's life, how I was able to rebuild somebody's fractured life, how to help somebody's existence, and indeed make them survive what's plaguing them every single day. So these are the tasks, these are the the objectives through my work. Everything else is secondary. If there's some money available, well, that's just a bonus. But my priority is saving somebody's life. And saying these things is just really, my heart sinks. That's all I can tell you. So let's just read the last paragraph of his letter. Bethesda remains one of the key pillars of Xbox, with a strong portfolio of amazing games and thriving communities. As we look to the future, there is an impressive lineup of games on the horizon. So he will be now labeling and naming the games which are AAA blockbusters. So in 2024 alone, we have Starfield Shattered Space. So that's the first DLC for a wonderful game that they produced. Fallout 76 Skyline Valley, another AAA blockbuster aligned with the series that came out on Amazon. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, huge hit likely to be with what I've seen so far. And then The Elder Scrolls Online's Golden Road. So you could see the actual idea is get all the resources working on smaller projects into the big AAA blockbusters, and the small projects and small studios just, put a bin. They're of no interest to anyone. And that's not the way it should be. That's the trouble. And that's the danger when you join such massive big $1 trillion corporation. You think you will be able to get great exposure and support and everything else, but this may not be reflected in your day-to-day life and work if, for instance, other types of priorities come to fore. And the bottom line is you cannot predict what's going to be happening. The tech's developing massively and rapidly, but the fact is the maintenance of these live server games is incredibly expensive. They require a lot of people. That you've seen with Bungie, so many problems with the live servers from time to time, and the gaming community is not tolerant. People want everything sorted straight away because they paid money for certain content or for certain items or cosmetics, whatever, Destinies, to agree available free of charge to many gamers. But, it's that degree of impatience and dissatisfaction, and I'm sure the executives have realized trying to rescue games which had failed launches like Anthem, that was done at BioWare, no connection to Microsoft Studios, or Redfall, which was heavily invested into. I mean, Redfall was to be one of the biggest games of last year, with its marketing campaign and everything. They thought it was going to be like the next Fallout, and they was thinking of the franchise and spin-offs and God knows what, and it just completely failed. But then compare that with an independent studio like CD Projekt Red, having one of the most successful trilogies in history, the Witcher trilogy, and after that launching Cyberpunk, which completely bombed as it was released to our consoles. And they worked. They protected the investment. They worked hard. They made lots of updates. And today, 3 years later, that's an amazing game. And it seems to me that at Microsoft, they don't have patience, money or time or anything else which would cater for that sort of long-term work in order to repair. And they do not have time to be waiting. And it all comes back to the investors. The way things are today in the global economy are difficult. The reason for that is the modern technology is allowing people to see the results from second to second. There's no more waiting periods, waiting for a telegram to arrive or waiting for the telex to give you the message. It's gone. That's sent to oblivion. You get messages of what's happening day after, minute after minute. through the internet and various other hubs, so you know exactly what is happening. And you don't want the investors who are presenting it with huge revenue to be kept in a cold. And what they do not want to see, and I've got to say, I mean, if you invested, let's say, $20,000-$30,000 in Redfall, and it bombed, and you're never going to have the return of that revenue, you would be very, very concerned if you were to carry on with the projects that were causing the same sort of mayhem. But on the other hand, you know, game making or creative arts, they cannot be just aligned with financial industries and seen as an arm which the investors will be making extra bucks or they have huge returns. Well, let them have some returns. They don't have to be massive. And I think there needs to be a greater voice of reason applied to it. It's present in industries across the board. It's not just present in this video game industry. So I think I want to say to people, I think it's just, why is that happening? Well, it's a general global trend. The reason for that is simple. Everything is too expensive. You know, the financial markets push the prices to what's called the ceiling. So that's the prices that the investors and the big cheese is prepared to pay. Once it comes to the ceiling, they will not be able to pay anymore, and they will just basically start selling everything. And when that happens, there's a huge, huge financial crash. It's a huge economic crisis, and the collapse of both the economy, industry, and everything else. And it's been really pushed to the ceiling for quite some time. So the reason for that is, if everything's so expensive, you have got to make sure that what you're selling is going to be selling. It can't be like shot in the dark. And that is sadly the collateral. So coming back to the last bit of this paragraph, it says, as we align our plans and resources to best set ourselves up for success in this complex and very changing industry, our teams across Arc and Leon, Bethesda Game Studios, ID Software, Machine Games, ZeniMax Online Studios, and the Bethesda Publishing and corporate teams will be well positioned to build new IP, explore new game concepts, and expand on our existing franchises. Well, nicely worded, but I don't think anybody who is in that crew will believe any words of what Mr. Booty had said. And that's very disappointing because both him and Phil come across as very nice guys, the former gamers, and very much, I guess, embedded within the industry and the gaming world. But, this is just clear-cut corporate business. It's got nothing to do with gaming. So, to put in perspective, they've got some other information. I know I'm talking a lot about this. I've got I've selected lots of other news which I wanted to tell you about, but today, this bombshell, like a nuclear Armageddon had happened, fallout had happened in the video game industry, and particularly at Bethesda and Microsoft. We can't just slay. We can't just forget about it. So I need to tell you all about it, all the information I've got, because that's really hot off the press. I just received it. I received it just before it went live on air, so therefore I was delayed for at least an hour. So I was reading and digesting the information. So, getting back to the article and all that's said, Microsoft's announcement of the cuts at Bethesda come over 3 months after the company announced plans to cut 1,900 staff from its video game force. So they did say that already previously, and amid a boom time for Bethesda's Fallout series, following the massive breakout hit Prime Video TV show, which was launched a couple of weeks ago. The closure of Tango Gameworks hits just over a year after the launch of Hi-Fi Rush, which many considered in the gaming community to be one of the best Xbox games in recent years, if not really on the list of the 10 best games they ever produced. So Aaron Greenberg, who was vice president of Xbox Game Marketing, in April 2023, so it's a couple of years ago, last year, big pardon, he addressed concern that Hi-Fi Rush had failed to meet sales targets, calling the game a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. So you could see, he said that it was a huge hit, but it didn't meet the expectation of the sales. And then maybe that is linked with the fact that it was given to us day one through Game Pass. And don't forget, Game Pass is a subscription service. So I can play up to 500 games on that subscription. Don't have to pay anything extra for them. Maybe sometimes purchase some DLCs if that's required. But this could be a contributing factor. I don't know. And I just want to say to everyone, Game Pass and PS PS Plus premium services. They're all available at the moment, right? And these services have got to be enjoyed as much as possible. Sooner or later, if they become financially non-viable, or there's going to be some financial risk attached to them, they realize, it'd be much better if we're selling the games elsewhere or restricting the games, then the services will disappear. And I can't say, I can't stress high enough to everyone, like what I said about indie games, make sure you subscribe, because if you subscribe, like with Netflix or other services, you are going to be supporting those communities. You are going to make sure that they receive enough revenue and that they will be able to provide you with more content. Otherwise, it's going to be the other way. And I can't stress that high enough, really. People complain about the service being very expensive. I don't think it is. I don't think Netflix is expensive. I don't think, Game Pass is expensive. If you consider what you're getting for it, you go to cinema. It's kind of putting together with kind of ideas about Netflix. You pay £15-20 in Britain for an ordinary cinema screening, and you pay what? £12-13. You have options which are not as costly. I'm paying the premium option for Netflix with 4K and Ultra HD and top-notch sound and everything is superb. You can go for a cheap option, and you're not paying anything much. Loads of films to see. The same thing applies to Xbox Game Pass. So I don't see that as particularly expensive, considering that a new game, just looking at Stellar Blade yesterday, will be costing £70. Like one game, £70. And the games like that will sooner or later emerge on these streaming platforms. So Stellar Blade will be on PS Plus Premium sooner or later, at some point, one day. And I think we really need to support such services. I'm an older gamer, somebody who's been doing the games for many years, since the early 90s. So I've seen the markets change. I've seen the trends swing both ways, and I'm amazed with what's been achieved. It's just mind-boggling. I never thought that in my life I'd be able to see these kinds of services emerge, and that quantity of titles being instantly available to me at my fingertips, because previously I had to buy everything, and the games were extremely expensive, so it's just a very small number that I would purchase, and I would resort to either AAA blockbusters, or I would go for the titles that were greatly reduced then eventually. And there was a possibility of getting some of these titles, but you would wait for years. It wasn't just like what you get today with competitive pricing. And I think the remarks from Greenberg are very important, because he said it was a hugely successful game, everyone loved it, but actually didn't make the money. And the bottom line is, if we didn't make the money, then investors would be, basically questioning what was going on at the company. So from Tango Gameworks, a very, very short statement, very different to Arcane. And they said, today it was announced that Tango Gameworks will close. Thank you to everyone that explored the worlds we created. Hi-Fi Rush, along with Tango's previous titles, will remain available and playable everywhere they are today. So that's extremely brief. We do not know anything from that. It's literally 2 sentences. And then in a series of tweets, Arcane Beyond chief Dinga Bakaba hit out at the cuts, and he said, this is just absolutely terrible. To any executive reading this, friendly reminder that video games are an entertainment / culture industry, and your business as a corporation is to take care of your artists and entertainers and help them create value for you, which I agree with. I mean, he is just stressing the fact that the entertainment industries will consist of artists, and these people are not financiers or investors. Don't throw us into gold fever gambits. Don't use us as strawmen for miscalculations and blind spots. Don't make our work environments Darwinist jungles. You say we make you proud when we make a good game. Well, make us proud when the times are really tough. We know you can. We've seen that before. Well, that's fantastic what he's writing. For now, great teams are sunsetting before our eyes yet again. And it is absolutely like a gut stab. Leon is safe, but please be tactful and discerning about all this, and respect affected folks. Voice and leave it room to be heard. It's their story to tell, their feelings to express. Inside baseball, but if I read immersive simcast from the community, especially from a fellow developer. I swear to God, please, let's talk about the real challenges instead of rehashing irrational anxieties of the past. Even more inside baseball, but with a very, very wide range, as a wise and sorely missed man said, please, please stop. So this is what he said. And this is really, as he said, gut-wrenching. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And he's obviously an executive. He's one of the people, the very top of that studio. He's not being affected at the moment, but he may be the next one in the line. So, he's supporting his colleagues unashamedly and in the best possible way, it has to be said. Layoffs are sweeping the video game industry with a number of high-profile studios cutting staff or shutting down. In stark contrast to a year of blockbuster video game hits, one of the biggest ongoing industry trends in 2023, last year, was the prevalence of mass layoffs, and they have continued until the present day. So, the actual figures are quite difficult to obtain. Estimates suggest that the number of workers laid off in games last year approached or exceeded 10,000. 10,000 people lost their jobs in those industries in the course of last year. That's horrific. A recent GDC survey of developers suggests 1/3 of all game developers were impacted by significant layoffs last year, either directly or by witnessing them happen at the company. Well, my friends, what do I tell you? It is gut-wrenching news, and I do not want to see the situation where a game fails, like for instance Redfall, and then you have this sort of purge. It's almost like a representation of the greatest possible intolerance. One error and you're out. It just reminds you of war. There's no second chance in war. If you're on the battlefield, there's just one chance. You're either going to survive or you're going to die. There isn't anything else. And that's not the way it needs to be when it comes to creative industries. I have got to say, it's just, you see, several people are, the news are broken out, and, I've seen like Phil Spencer's trending at the moment, and he had a few thousand tweets, and it's gone to a few thousand, and it's going to be causing an avalanche of reaction and an earthquake across the board, because lots of people say, well, these studios have gone to Microsoft in order to be greatly supported and produce high-quality games, and the studios are very different, and they're just being literally ring-fenced. Some people are carrying on then working on Elder Scrolls Online, and other people are being binned. They've gone. They're no longer parts of this company. And the closure is imminent, which means they'll get the notices today, and they'll probably be asked to leave on Friday. And it's just really... I'm speechless. What can I tell you? I feel for those guys. I know what passion goes into creation of every single segment of every single game, and similar to musicians, you prepare for the very best show, and then suddenly you come to a venue where something doesn't work, like the tech doesn't work, the speakers break down, the amplifiers don't get properly connected, and then the whole show appears to be a complete fluke, and there's collateral. You're not getting any more shows at that venue, but it's gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, it's demoralizing for those people who are involved. But the only word of wisdom which I have for anyone who's affected is chin up. This is not the end of the world, and if indeed this is the way it is today, well, it will get better. You'll find something else, and remain upbeat and positive, and like Tim Schafer, start creating your own games, do your own thing. Make sure you are upbeat, you are forward-thinking, you're not demoralized, you're not considering that this is a total Armageddon for everything you've done in the past. It isn't. You produce fantastic games. You will carry on doing this. You just need to find new investors and new means of support. And just, it's tough, but you need to carry on. You need to grit your teeth and say, well, yeah, I have stamina. I'll do what's necessary, and I'll survive another day. And you will have the utmost support from gaming community. Even people who were angry about Redfall, they will support the people who worked on the game. They know that it's not the people who work on the game that would have caused that sort of disastrous launch. It's other people who are connected with either the revenue or any other aspects of the game production that have got nothing to do with those who were designing characters and working on backgrounds and just basically being involved with everything that the game will consist of. So keep this in mind when you think about this. And like I said, I wish everyone well, and just remain upbeat and positive and look for additional support and do something new, do something else. Do not resort to despair. That's the bottom line. Because when you resort to despair, you feel so demoralized, you feel the world's gone, then everything becomes increasingly difficult, you know? And like what we see in psychological health, keeping the hope ahead of us, keeping the hope high, keeping the belief in that the hope is around the corner and that the good times will come back again is critical. Absolutely critical. You know, there's no way through which somebody can survive terrible situations and painful events unless one thinks that there is going to be something better ahead of us. So keep this in mind if you are approaching that redundancy. It will not be the end of the world. Right, so do I tell you anything else? It just seems that it's pointless, really, considering how things are. I've got other news prepared. I'll read them out tomorrow. And I feel really affected by these layoffs, and I feel affected because I played these games and I complained about Redfall and I loved Hi-Fi Rush and I played The Evil Within, and you know, not my sort of game, but I thought it was very well made and with huge success everywhere. Massively greatly embraced by various community members who like horror games and people who are into that. So I really am perturbed by the whole situation and the whole idea that the need for priorities and the need for expansion within the existing titles, and certainly the titles that are very successful, is something that can be causing the demise of those others. I did think that the number of studios they acquired was exceeding the numbers that any corporation would want to have under the umbrella. And if you have that many studios under the umbrella, you will be increasingly competitive. You'll be initially you'll be scrutinizing the results even more, and you will be paying more attention to every shillings and pence that go in and come from the purchasers and the gaming community. And you know, a lot of people complained. I remember reading and listening to people from Bungie, although they didn't really express that directly. They've not pronounced any names of the companies, but they felt that Destiny on Game Pass was not producing them with the results that they expected, you know, and that was on all levels. And maybe one of the reasons when it came to the increase of the number of things which you had to buy in Destiny, like for instance cosmetic packs and was it 30-year anniversary packs and all sorts, was partly based on the cash flow problem. You know, having suffered through the pandemic and then being on the Game Pass for 12 months could have caused you know, a big hole where the money was not coming in and the game is costing. You need to be maintaining the service and doing everything necessary. So I guess the monetization model is something that needs to be heavily examined by the companies participating. But I can't stop thinking that the companies which are small, like the ones we just heard, well, actually these companies are not that small, but I mean the independent developers producing indie games like the ones I talked about today, are the companies that will benefit the most. You know, the big cheese coming there, maybe, I don't know. It is. We need to look at tangible facts. We need to look at the accounts and the real figures and the real results which the games are producing on such service. Hard to tell. I find it hard to speculate, but regardless, irrespective of all of this, I have got a serious problem hearing that many studios belonging to that group of game makers or developers is now disappearing further, and all being given notices on the same day. I find that really mind-boggling and devastating, and that's probably the greatest purge I've seen in recent years, or maybe the greatest purge overall, considering numbers of people who will lose their jobs and the number of studios which are under a question mark. Amongst all that I've heard, there have been closures of studios and there have been also layoffs, but this seems to be topping it all off. Topping it all up, I mean, with the statements that I don't really think are giving us much of an explanation for the reasons. And, like the director of Arcane Leon Studio said, they need to be considering creative community and the people who work on the games. This is not purely a Wall Street based investment fund or hedge fund. You know, it's got different merits and different elements that will be affecting everyone who is fully involved with the process of video game making. And all of us treasure the great titles. All of us treasure sometimes even the moments which perhaps did not turn out to be as great as expected. Give an example. Mass Effect is a huge trilogy. It's a massive big success, one of the best trilogies ever made. On the Legendary Edition, which I played recently and completed, it's best ever. But if you go back in time, for Mass Effect, you go back in time for Cyberpunk, okay, it's a more recent development. We're going back in time for Destiny. These games didn't perform on the launch. They didn't perform. But these studios did retain that degree of independence, and they worked on the project. And they delivered the product. You know, they reworked the game and produced something that was giving us very good results. The problem with Mass Effect was it wasn't compatible with all platforms. It was very laggy. It was very choppy. I remember playing the original Mass Effect 1 on my Xbox 360. It was very, very choppy. It was really seriously troubling, particularly as you were entering those fighting sequences. It was just really not performing. But it was a great game, and the game had been improved. You know, it was done on the old gen engine, and when you play it today on the Legendary, which is what, 15-16 years later, it's incredible. It looks and feels like a present day and age game which has been just created. Everything plays perfectly, no lag, no delay. It did take time for that to be improved, and you know, the community of gamers was not bringing out the hatchet. We did not like the fact that it was performing poorly on the technical front, but we enjoyed the content. We thought it was incredible, and of course the game ascended as it progressed. Also, I have to say, recently I completed Andromeda, which is it's not really part of the trilogy, it's a part of the franchise or part of the series, and it had really, really bad reviews. Really, one of the reasons I've not really played much of it was, I guess, my own dissatisfaction with the very beginning of the game, which was technically difficult, unsound, and even today when you play the game you will see two different types of dialogue. The dialogue which is identical to what you had in the previous trilogy, and then you have the dialogue which does not work. You have framing that puts you as the main character, the playable character, out of the frame. So you're kind of half in, half out. Half of you is seen, and then the other character is, if you are rotating the position you're in, kind of halfway through the screen as well. And it just seems like really bad, like really unnatural, unappealing, and that's off-putting. But as you carry on in the game, that becomes less of a concern, and it has an amazing content. It's amazing storytelling. The quantity of things you can do is just like really mind-boggling. I played probably 120 hours, 115, 20 hours, maybe a bit more, of Andromeda, and it became very enjoyable as I carried on. Every night I was saying, another chapter, another quest, another thing I want to do. Love my character, my rider. Posted my rider to my Twitter, and that rider is probably the character, well, customization of the character is probably the best I've ever completed on any game. I just love the character, the way she comes across. It's like absolutely a perfect female protagonist for me. She looks a bit like Rooney Mara in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but not quite, you know. It's a sort of physique. She's sympathy, but very sort of on the thin side, and does have that sort of cut-off demeanor. You know, she's like there, but she's always thinking. She's very wise. She takes the best decisions, and it's just absolutely tip-top. The best possible character for that sort of game, and one of my favorite characters of all time. So, anyway, coming back to it, it also had very unfavorable reviews. And still today, a lot of people complain about it. But I've talked to a lot of Mass Effect gamers, and people are really hardcore gamers. Initially thought, this is sort of changing the environment, swinging from the original trilogy, but we like it. We you know, the content's very good. There are lots of different characters, lots of things to do, and I guess they were experimenting with that being open world and that being explorable, although they did not create that many proper open world activities, so they become a bit stifled, a bit boring. If you're looking for some mineral exploring planets, there's nothing much on them, but The thing you can see in Andromeda was that jump fly type of movement, and that's been incorporated in Anthem. So Anthem was really working on the that in-game mechanic that would have to be, or they wanted it to be even more well developed, but it didn't really work at the end of the day. I had some difficulties originally when playing Anthem with flying in general, but then once you get used to it, you're sort of quite happy and you know what to do, and you have 4 different characters who can be selected as your playables, and you can see that sort of evolution, the strategy of evolution. But anyway, coming back to these games, what I tried to say is if you have an initial problem with the release, it doesn't have to be staying there forever if you invest your time and energy in repairing it. But I guess what we've seen today is that the patience coming from the investors is running out. They have got no means of anticipation or anything else if it comes to lengthy waiting periods. And they want to have, first of all, clear-cut targets. They want to have clear-cut gains and clear returns on the investment as soon as possible. I guess similar to what you have with sales of properties or equity or anything else. And that is certainly of concern to me, and it's of concern to many people who are dedicated to this wonderful new industry, and we don't know what's going to be happening next, basically. And anyway, it's a bit of a gloomy end to my news today, and I didn't really want it to be gloomy. I'm always positive and upbeat and always think about the next day, but I don't like what I'm seeing, and I don't really like seeing that indie games or smaller titles are being totally overshadowed by AAA blockbusters, because they have both the budget and the marketing and the global domination, and they require more workers and people to come in there. It just doesn't seem to be fully justified, you know. There may be other reasons that they're not disclosed to the public. You will know that the overall business, the way it's run, is not always transparent. There are sometimes issues which cannot be disclosed, and it just seems to be very drastic. Was it 4 or 5 studios all at once in one day, everyone getting their P45s? It's just, you know. Anyway, that's probably all I wanted to tell you today. So I hope you enjoyed the news. Once again, I want to say to the guys that are losing their jobs there, chin up. It's not the end of the world. You'll find something else. Stay true to the core. Retain your independence. Work on amazing projects. We are going to support you. We are here to help everyone who works in those industries, particularly those who are operating as independents. And there will be other games that are successful for you and for everyone else. So remain positive, upbeat, basically have a good night's sleep and don't worry too much about it, and then things will progress to some better days with better results, and maybe with some new employers and new supporters of your creativity and your projects. So very important to keep in mind, to keep upbeat, positive and forward thinking. Whatever's happened is already gone. It's happened, and just send it to oblivion, send it to the past, and think about the next day. Think about what you will do, which is going to be as amazing, as great as those events or accomplishments from the past. On that note, I shall wish you all a very, very good night. I shall, first of all, conclude the session today by saying thank you for watching, thank you for supporting my channel, and indeed for supporting my news bulletins. Thank you for watching, thank you for contributing. Most importantly, I want to thank everyone who is participating in our charitable fundraiser by sharing the information about Mind Charity, by following, by liking, by talking to others about the charity that's helping people who are suffering from mental health problems, and therefore becoming an active participant in the process to which these lives and fractured minds and broken emotions are being put back together. They are being saved. They're being brought back to life. People are being put in a situation where life and everyday existence becomes a very different place. So thank you for that. Thank you for supporting it. And I wish you all a very good night. Take care, and I'll see you all soon.